I've come to realize that I really overestimated your talent and ability. And so I'm thankful that you've made me feel so comfortable and talented doing this year. So thank you.
That is very sweet, Rob. That very sweet, very on brand.
Hey, Dave, happy almost Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Rob. How are you?
Doing okay. As you might have noticed, my desk situation here is slightly off. I don't have our cool sign behind us.
Oh, what happened?
About a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, here in St. Louis, we had some torrential downpours, and my basement got a bit wet, which sucked because we spent a crap ton of money making sure that wouldn't happen, but our sump pump malfunctioned.
Oh shit!
Yes. So long story short, not the whole thing, just the ground. Like this office where I record, it didn't flood, but the carpet was saturated in some other places. So I had to move the desk around here, and I forgot until about 5 minutes before I was coming to sit down here that the office was not set up the way I wanted it to, and I was like, "There's no way, I can reshuffle this office right now." So you're getting, old school blank wall behind me.
It's back to the prison,
back to the old days. That's right. That's right. So we started with Thanksgiving, Dave, and I think that's going to be the theme of our show today, because when this is released, it will just be a couple days before Thanksgiving. And as is the case, I think, for many families, one of the things that I want to know about from you is, what are your Thanksgiving traditions? Specifically, are you one of those families that go around and say what you're thankful for? Do that with your family, with your extended family, with your parents? Or is that not something that you do?
We do that only because my wife makes us do that, but I really resent the fact that she does. We have some good traditions and some less than spectacular ones.
Okay.
And I would put the "what are you thankful for" in the less than spectacular category.
When you answer that question, is it genuine, or you just make shit up?
What happens is the first person, you're trying to be the first person to go. Yep. So that you can say, "I'm so happy that you're all here. And I just am so thankful for my family." But what happens is, if you're like at the middle of the table, and we do it at my house. So usually I'm at the head of the table. And so like it goes around everybody, and then it gets to me, and I'm like, Aunt Barb said it really well. I'm kind of like Aunt Barb. I'm really grateful that you're all here. That's how so I'm just like trying to survive it so people don't think I'm an a-hole is my typical strategy.
Right. So not only do you not have much to say, you're the last of 15 people to say it. So there's nothing left.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
We don't really do that. We've never, it will happen sporadically, or someone might remember one year to do, we have, I still meet for Thanksgiving and Christmas with extended family. My mom's, like my aunts, uncles, cousins, and dad's aunts, uncles, and cousins. But for both sides, that's never really been like a consistent tradition that we had.
What traditions do you have? Do you have a tradition?
Other than eating turkey and accompanying sides, there isn't really much of it just kind of the routine Thanksgiving type stuff. What about you? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, we do a couple of things. The favorite thing that we do is we have a trophy that's given to the person that brings the best dessert. And so everybody has to bring a dessert, and then we have like a scoring sheet. So you like bring your dessert, and you prep it in my office, which is like adjacent to the kitchen. You prep it there, and then somebody else comes in, doesn't know who prepped which one, and brings them out so that there's total anonymity. And then everybody goes with a fork, and you have a scoring sheet like you're tasting wines, and you score it on taste, on creativity, and on presentation. And then my dad will tabulate and decide who wins, and then you go around. Like my mom won last year, which total bullshit. She didn't really win, but my dad scored it that way. But she won, and so for the whole year, she gets this trophy, and that gets passed around the family.
I love that. At some point, if I ever host Thanksgiving, which I
Yeah,
don't, but if I do, I am stealing that. I think that's great. And it also
it's
makes
really fun.
complete sense why you like that, too. That is so down
Yeah,
your alley,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Make something competitive.
yeah. And then we spend the whole day talking shit about how everybody's pie sucks, or this one had no structure, or you didn't make your crust, or whatever it is. And it's good fun.
So as opposed to expressing gratitude to the winner and acknowledging their baking prowess, you just talk shit and make fun of them.
Yeah. Yes.
Got it.
This
Okay.
is how we. Yeah. This is how we hug.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
I like that. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to talk a bit more about gratitude today. So, 'tis the season. It got me thinking about gratitude. And this is actually something that, at least in my working with some leaders, I have talked to over the past decade of doing this job. I've talked to a lot of leaders about gratitude before and encouraged some of them to engage in some of these activities related to gratitude. Um, and so I want to talk a little bit more about what it is, how I see it, the benefits of expressing gratitude, expressing thankfulness. Um, Sometimes some of the downsides, at least that I see, at least in a organizational setting at times, but sometimes just in a social setting, interpersonal setting, to all this. And then at the end, we'll see kind of what do we recommend as it relates to gratitude. I'd like to tell the folks listening what our thoughts are.
Deal. I'm in.
Okay. I'm curious though, do you encourage people that you work with to engage in some of the gratitude practices?
I don't. I mean, I know that there's like it's very in vogue in our line of work to recommend a gratitude journal,
Mm-hmm.
and they make my stomach turn. Like just the idea of it, I just struggle with. Like I just struggle. I know, but the data, I believe, and I think you'll tell me, the data is overwhelming that it's really helpful. It is.
Yeah.
It is definitely a best practice, and I don't know why I don't like it, but I struggle to tell people to do that. And so, no, I sort
Yeah.
of try to find any other solution other than a gratitude journal because it just seems so simple. I can't believe it actually moves the needle. So,
I
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, we'll get into it a little bit later on. You and I might at least directionally agree on some of this at times. But before we dive into that, I guess
Mhm.
I just want to make sure people understand what we're talking about here. So when I think of gratitude, or sometimes the wording that's used is practicing gratitude, um, again, the Thanksgiving example I think is a good example. I would define it um, as showing appreciation. And I took this from a definition I found, but showing appreciation for the things in your life that are going well and are positive. In other words,
Mhm.
feeling grateful about one's lot in life and outcomes.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it's, again, just an acknowledgement of what's going well. It comes from a um, a branch of psychology called positive psychology,
Mhm.
which essentially came up. I'm not going to go into it all, partly because I don't know all the history, but all I know is, it started a couple decades ago because psychology for a long time was rooted more in mental illness and what's not going right with
Mhm.
people and trying to fix them. And so positive psychology came along a couple decades ago and saying, well, in addition to focusing on that, let's also focus on what is going well. What's the positive side of things? Are,
I believe the godfather of positive psychology, his name is Martin Seligman. I
yep,
think that's right. Is
you're
that
right.
right? That's
Yep.
right. Do you know that was on one of my comp questions? Was you had to name 5 sort of godfathers of counseling psychology, and I selected him. Then my chair, I'm gonna get angry. My chair brings me in and goes, "You didn't study at all for your comps, did you?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Seligman was a clinical psychologist." I was like, "Oh, come on." But
Why couldn't you talk about a clinical psychologist? Because you're a
is, well,
counselor?
I'm a counseling psychologist, so they wanted us to know who were the counseling psychologists that did. But I would argue that this is very much in alignment with counseling psychology.
Right.
Positive psychology is much more in alignment with counseling than clinical psychology. Anyway, so I got a thrashing. I had to do a rewrite on that question because I picked Seligman as one of my people.
So this is the reason you don't like gratitude, because you got in
got a
trouble
lot of
back in
anger.
grad school, right? You got a lot of anger. I mean, you got a lot of anger in general, but you got a lot of anger about it.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
right.
that makes
That's right.
sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So again, there's I think a lot of focus on this, like I was saying, because in general, psychology can be a bit more focused on the negative. Um, and I think you've mentioned this concept before, and we've done a couple episodes about biases, but I think this relates to like a negativity bias,
Yeah.
where people tend to focus a bit more on kind of adverse events and negative outcomes as opposed to positive outcomes.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think it is, I think the idea of positive psychology really changed the field significantly.
Right.
Right. If they always do that experiment where if I tell you to look around the room and find everything that is whatever blue, you'll start finding all kinds of things that you never knew were blue, and
Yep.
colors that are not quite blue, you'll shade them more blue so that you can name them. Right. And when you're
Yep.
doing that, you'll ignore every other color in the
Yep.
rainbow that's in the room. And it's the same thing, like this idea of focusing on what's going well, especially when you're sort of spinning, if you're depressed or you're anxious. I think the field is, it's a very powerful sort of a part of psychology.
Yeah. I mean, I think it certainly can be, because in general, again, the negativity bias that a lot of people have can be stronger.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they actually quantified this, but in preparation for our conversation today, I found some stat that said negativity is 1 to 2 times more powerful than positivity. In other words, as far as like kind of like the strength of the memory of the experience
Yeah.
is 2 to 3 times stronger than something positive. And so if you're already going to be oriented to something negative, and then
Mm-hmm.
that negative thing happens, it's going to stick in your mind a lot more than something positive, and you're not as likely to look for something that's going well, that's
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah. That fits you ever heard of loss aversion?
Yep.
Like it's the same kind of thing where it really sucks. It's okay if you win something, but if you lose something, it's devastating.
What I want to know is how come I need more loss aversion when I go to Las Vegas.
You don't
I
have
want to
loss
tell,
aversion?
unfortunately not. So I'm going to do a quick side thing. So I went and visited some family recently, and was talking to a cousin's son who is like 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister was in the car, uncle was in the car. We were talking, and I mentioned how I've been to Las Vegas recently. And then the 6-year-old next to me was asking, "What is Las Vegas? And what do you do there?" And I was telling him, and it's like, "Yeah, you gamble." Trying to explain to a 6-year-old what gambling is, and then why you continually do it.
Yeah. The
Right? It
6-year-old's like,
does cause you to question, like, God, conceptually,
yeah.
why the hell do I continue doing this? Because
Yeah.
of like the 3 times I left Vegas with money,
Mm-hmm.
but I, of course, have forgotten the 15 times I've left having lost everything I brought with me.
Yeah. I always think it's amazing if you walk around like the casino floor and look at everybody's faces. No one's laughing. No one's happy. You're just at a slot machine, right? It's just people like, oh
I don't
God.
even do that. Just pressing
But
buttons now. It's just a button.
but you like that, 'cause you and I have been to Vegas, but I don't think we gambled much. I'm trying to think. We did like
I
blackjack,
did.
but I spend the entire
Yeah.
time anxious and not.
Well,
This is my steady state.
yeah. I mean, I would gamble. I've been there with my wife, with friends, for bachelor parties, yeah, just for friend trips, stuff like that. And I like going there. I mean, for no more than like 2.5 days,
Yeah.
um, but yeah. Anyway, you mentioned loss aversion, but yeah. So I would say that's a reason, and then maybe tied into that, in this negativity bias can also just be related to some people, to just anthropologically, right? It's better to focus on the harm that we might encounter to prevent us from being harmed or killed, as opposed to thinking about the things that are
Mhm.
going great, because it doesn't necessarily help us stay alive.
Yeah.
So it's just part
Yeah.
of that reptilian brain that we have left
Yeah.
over from, hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yeah. It serves you better to be skittish than
Yeah.
bullish all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Hold on.
you mentioned,
I just have a question, just because now that you got me thinking about that. If you think about like anxious animals, so
yeah,
like rabbits, deer, right? These animals they have no good like defense. They're not predators.
nope.
These are prey, and prey are constantly on edge, constantly. So you would imagine that a deer, like I guess here's a question: do they also have more loss aversion? Like, would they rather protect against all risk and be safe versus have a bounty of food? So, like, would a deer? Just bear with
Yeah.
me here. Compared to a predator, does a predator have less anxiety, and then are they therefore built to take on more risk for the purpose of whatever it is that they want to get? Do you know? I know I'm going down
Yeah.
but
No.
oh, go ahead. We're gonna say,
You're going down a rabbit hole. Is that what you're
yeah,
going to say?
that's right. Yeah, like a rabbit goes.
Uh,
Yeah,
I would agree. I mean, when I watch nature specials, it's a lot more likely that you see a pride of lions just hanging out doing nothing,
yeah,
or a bunch of crocodiles in the
yeah.
river just hanging out.
Yes,
You rarely see a bunch of wildebeest or impala on the African Serengeti just lounging.
just hanging out. Yeah, just hanging. No big
Yeah,
deal. Right? They
right,
live their life pretty. But if you think about it, like we are an apex predator now,
right.
but we haven't been historically. There was a
I
time
mean,
when we
yeah.
were not. And so I wonder if we're built more skittish, and that's why we have this negativity bias. Is that we're built to be anxious about bad things happening, so we avoid risk. Does
And
that make sense?
yeah, I mean, it does. And we may be apex predators as we compare ourselves to other species of animals, but I would say within the past couple thousand years, there's also just been a lot of killing of each other. So
Yeah.
trying to plan ahead for that has also been probably fruitful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep.
um, okay, so you mentioned research, and yeah, there's a lot of research that talks about the positive effects of gratitude. Um, I'm not going to get all of this, but a couple that I wrote down, that there's a strong relationship between expressing gratitude and being more satisfied with one's life. So the kind of just life satisfaction, sense of well-being. So you get that kind of broad type of concept. And then it goes something pretty deep. There was a couple of studies that indicated that people who demonstrate and express more gratitude get better sleep.
Really?
You're more sound sleepers, apparently. I'm not sure of the mechanism behind that,
Yeah.
but that's what the
Yeah.
article would suggest. And then there's a lot, of course, so that's more individual and then kind of interpersonal. If I'm like you and I, like if I express gratitude to you, it's supposed to enhance our relationship. We feel um, closer, especially if then you reciprocate. So it's puzzling to me that we feel like we're friendly, because at least I would never
Very low. Yeah.
do that for
Uh,
you. Yeah.
Yeah. You are a little slow on the gratitude, Rob. I'd like a little more. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
think the joke that I make is I'm bilingual in English and sarcasm. So in general, gratitude is a difficult thing for me.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does feel a bit too vulnerable. And people who know me well, like, my wife for sure, my parents when I was a kid, I was like that as well. So when we get into why some of the downsides to gratitude or to being overly positive, I would say part of it is probably just my orientation to it. Like to
But
your
why do
point, I
you?
read everything that the positive side. I make sense when I do it. It makes me feel better to
Yeah.
make other people feel better. But it just feels kind of like, all right.
Yeah. Why do you think it makes you, not just you, but anybody feel vulnerable? Why is there? Why does Why does being grateful for what you have make you vulnerable?
I think it's less for me. It's less about being grateful for what I have. I feel most vulnerable and uncomfortable if I express like gratitude for a relationship with someone.
Oh,
Like
because
that
you're. Oh,
feels
I got.
it's overly emotional for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think through it. So you're sort of putting yourself in a one down position. I am thankful that
Mm-hmm.
you're in my life because I
Mm-hmm.
need you so much.
Right.
That's the.
And if you go a step further, like I would ask me, well, is that because you've not had that historically reciprocated? And I would say, no, that's not
Mhm.
true. I mean, I was a nerdy kid and got made fun of as a kid, but I mean, is that the reason why I'm uncomfortable with it? I mean, it could be,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's something else there. Yeah, it just makes me feel a bit too open, too
Yeah. I
vulnerable
don't like it
sometimes.
either. And I don't, and I also don't know what the mechanism is, but I also feel vulnerable and I don't like it. I mean, it doesn't feel, it just feels too intimate, but I don't
Yeah,
know what's, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I think everyone who's listening can tell that you and I are trying desperately to stay on task and talk about
Yeah.
the upsides of it, but are most naturally going back to why this kind of
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. That's it. And that's how I feel about it too. Like, ugh.
Yeah,
I feel like we're at the table right now and you're like, okay, it's coming, Dave, where you have to say what you're thankful for. And I'm like, oh
yeah,
God.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because yeah, it's like cognitively, like objectively, I feel like what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Just say it, just do it.
Yeah.
But then it's more the emotional side, it's the discomfort that I don't like.
Hmm.
Um, but I think sarcasm is another way to demonstrate your affection and closeness to someone. So I think it's great.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um, so yeah, so gratitude in general, the research would indicate that um there's a lot of positivity to it. I think one of the things that people who study this would say that gets in the way, speaking of what we're talking about, and I thought about you a little bit when I was reading this, Dave. Like, what gets in the way of someone being demonstrating more gratitude? And I've just come to know this about you more over the past 8 or so years that we've got to know each other. It's ego. People who have a strong.
Okay.
I was trying to do a nice clean up where you might think I was going to say something nice there.
Yeah. Something sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Right.
No, there's this concept, right? The opposite would be ingratitude, and
Hmm.
why people are less likely to demonstrate gratitude or feel it. And it's essentially ego, kind of an arrogance, can sometimes be the reason why someone is less likely to be gracious to someone else, is what some researchers would say here,
I
is
think that
because it's an inability to do that.
I think that makes, sadly, I think that does make sense. And I think that that's why I don't feel, this sounds awful. I think that's why I don't have a big need to be gratitude. I don't feel like I am missing gratitude.
Like, you're not getting enough of it.
I just
Is
don't
that what
think,
you're saying?
I guess let me say it this way. If I would ever recommend that somebody do a gratitude journal,
Hmm.
it would be because I think that person doesn't is it doesn't think that they're doing well in life. I think that person isn't clocking how successful they are. I think this person, like, it's not that I think that they're ingrateful or ungrateful. It's not that I think they're
Ungrateful.
ungrateful. I think it's that they're not recognizing that they deserve all of these things. And I think that someone with a big ego, and I guess I put myself in this category, I don't walk around being like, oh, I don't deserve that. I think I walk around being like, Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's my orientation
Yeah.
is like a
Yeah.
selfish big ego. And so I don't find myself, I think I clock that I have the things that I want to have and I don't, there's no, I think I deserve them also,
Yeah. Yeah.
which maybe that makes me like a psycho, but I think that's why I don't, I'm not drawn to gratitude.
I would say part of it for me also resonates when I read that. It's like similar to you. I don't like that it resonates with me necessarily, but
Yeah.
we've joked here before that that especially as a nerdy kid who got made fun of, right? A lot of my ego went to my intellect, like my
Yeah.
ability to get good grades and be more scholastically oriented. Um, and so maybe in a similar way, like I feel that way, that I'm pretty strong there at times, and so I don't need a lot of acknowledgement
Right. Yeah.
of
So if
it.
I said to you, you should be grateful for your education, you might like psychologically be like, well, but I'm smart and I do well at school, so of course I deserve the education. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, does it help? Do you get there like, oh, I earned that thing because I'm this way? Because there's ego tied to that a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. But as you said that, the other thought or feeling that occurs to me is a little bit of an embarrassment's the wrong word, but um, because I also feel like I'm pretty lucky. I don't like to talk
Yeah.
about that type of stuff. Like I probably
Yeah.
talk more about that here on this podcast
Yes.
than I ever talk about it in my private life or outside of this. Like I don't talk about this with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as
Sure.
you were saying that the emotion that was coming up for me is, and I also don't want to talk about it because it sounds like I'm bragging, and I don't like that. I don't like that in other people,
Right.
and I'm more sensitive to feeling like I'm coming across that way to someone else. So maybe it isn't. I mean, there's probably partly ego there for me, but maybe it's not
Mhm.
as much ego as I came into this conversation thinking.
Okay. So there's part of it. I think there's kind of, there's two levels to it. So when you talk about like somebody who, um, let's go the other way. If I said to you, who is someone that you would want to do a gratitude journal? It's either
About
what?
like I would do a gratitude journal about that person or
No,
someone
like
I
if
would
they were
suggest to do one.
they're your client. You're like, you need to be more
Yeah.
grateful. It's either someone who doesn't recognize, geez, it's someone who doesn't
Hey,
recognize
can't do
what they
thumbs up.
have. It's either someone who doesn't recognize what they have, or it's somebody who is um feels bad about themselves. They feel like they haven't done anything. So it's
Right.
either end of the spectrum. Someone who's got a
Yep.
lot of stuff and doesn't clock it, or someone who's disenfranchised. In
Mm-hmm.
both cases, you would want those people you want the spoiled person to recognize that they're lucky that they got these things.
Yep.
And you want the disenfranchised person to recognize that, hey, things have gone well for you. Like you want to empower them to go like, oh, my life isn't so bad.
Yep.
And I guess on the other end of the spectrum, someone who wouldn't be drawn to a gratitude journal, it could be because they feel overwhelmingly
Yep.
grateful and they're lucky to have had the things that they've got, which is what it sounds like you feel. Or it could be the sort of the dark side of that is I'm happy with all the things I've got. I know I have them, but I think I deserve them.
Yeah.
Right? That would be like the quadrant. Am I
Yeah.
saying that right? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple ways to look at it. I probably fall more in the middle of the lucky and I feel a little embarrassed, but there's
Yeah.
still some of the ego there
Yes.
for me as
Yeah.
well. Like, I
You know
earned
what's
it.
weird is I think I am like if you said, David, do you want to go live your life again and like do it all again?
Right.
I mean, I think I might like I would approach a couple years in high school differently, but largely I would never want to roll the dice because it's worked out so well.
Yeah.
It's worked out so well, and I feel very fortunate. So there's part of me that's like supremely lucky,
Yep.
but I don't have any. I don't have what you had, which was like that. I don't know if it's embarrassed or like, I don't deserve
Yeah.
this thing. I don't. I think I
Right.
have the ego that prevents me from feeling that way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think you may have more of it than I do. I'm probably just more ashamed of admitting that that's the case. So
My wife, when she's yelling at me, when she's mad at me, she complains that she thinks I have constant applause in my head. And that constant applause, she'll say that the applause is drowning reality out. And there is a piece of truth to that,
I
for
think
sure.
there is, because, at least those of us that work with you, we joke that you're such an easy pincushion, right? You're the easy butt of jokes.
Uh-huh.
And I think that part of that is because of that, right? Because you're like, it doesn't really matter. Like I'm pretty cool, so they can say what they want to say. It doesn't really
Yeah.
bother me. Whereas
Yeah.
to some other people that I might do that with, it would just cause them to second guess everything in their life,
Mhm.
and I'd feel really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
there's probably
that
some
makes
truth
a ton
there.
of sense. That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so what you and I have wanted to talk about. Why is gratitude the worst? Why does it suck? Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot out there to say why it sucks. But there are some studies out there that would say it's not always um, what it's publicized to be,
Uh-huh.
and there's a couple different reasons for it. So there are a couple studies, for example, and I think your example for Thanksgiving, what you do at the table may align with this. Is they did a study of um, people trying to demonstrate gratitude to friends and family and loved ones and things like that. And I can't remember all of the specifics of the study, but essentially what they found was that people were more likely to lie to describe something they really like about a loved one when put in the spot to do so. If they couldn't come up with something, they would always
Mhm.
come up with something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's this thought of being kind of disingenuous.
Yeah, it's
Like if you're
performative.
constantly doing this, yes, there you go.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing this more consistently, and maybe you are, you know, you have a good amount of ego, not too much, not too little, like you're fortunate enough, not, too much, too little, then a consistent focus on this. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're asked to do it, you might say something, but it might not be very genuine.
Mhm. Well, yes, and I also think, at least if I'm thinking about my family, I don't know that my family would, if I didn't do the "I'm so happy for the family,"
Yep.
if you weren't allowed to say that, like, the standard things, and we were talking about, like, the things that I'm grateful for, I don't know that it would land well with everybody. Do they really wanna know the things that I am worried about and have achieved, or the things that I am like, they'd probably be like, it would be like, "Stop bragging about that thing," or "That's not relevant to me," or "You're so lucky that you're in a position to," do you know what I mean? I think the truth of what I and anybody accomplishes and is grateful for, I don't know, at least in my family, if I'm not sure how well we would tolerate that,
Yeah.
you know?
So in other words, maybe like oftentimes, at least for us, if we're asked those questions, there's an expectation that you say something, but not that you go into too much depth about it, right?
Right.
It feels genuine, but it's a small example, and then you move on.
Yeah.
But if you were to go into a 5-minute monologue about what you're grateful for and your fears and all those things and why you're grateful,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
like,
truth would
all right,
land weird.
shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At
like
least
this isn't your therapy session.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. Um, I would say there's also this concept. One of the other critiques here is this concept that it causes people to overlook things that aren't going well
Mhm.
when they shouldn't be overlooked.
Mhm.
And so, for example, in organizations, if organizations are consistently focused on what is going well, it can cause some people to be a bit more critical. Well, why are we focusing on this when we know that X, Y, and Z is not going so hot? And then if you think about it more societally, there was a lot of art. I would say the bulk of critique that I found was around being genuine and kind of disingenuous, and then especially around like societal differences and power differences and things like that. There was a lot of research around, well, how do you find the balance to help individuals understand what's going well without causing them to overlook
Yeah.
why there are different um, you know lots in life, why there are power differences, why there are like racial differences in success and outcomes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to be overly focused on the positive because that prevents us from identifying what the issues are and trying to solve them.
Yep. Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
there's that part of it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say a personal bugaboo of mine is
I'm
what?
really grateful for your use of the word bugaboo.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
Personal one is the first time I encountered one of the questionnaires that sometimes in our line of work I'll hear people talk about, which is strengths finders. Have you ever taken a strengths finders?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
You have.
But I like the strength find. Why don't you like it?
So I think I've taken it too. I can't remember. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a questionnaire that you complete. It's kind of like a, a quasi personality questionnaire that just you answer some questions and it will identify for you something like your top 3 to 5 strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Like what characteristics about you are your strengths.
Yep.
And I think what can be good about it is, again, for people who may not be very reflective, who don't kind of engage in a lot of thought about who they are and why they do what they do. It can be helpful to think about those types of things. But like anything else, and maybe it's less my issue with the tool itself and more just how people talk about it, is there's something about when people say, well, I'm just focusing on my strengths now.
Oh yeah. I don't like that. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Which is the theory underpinning the strengths finder is just that instead of you worrying about what's wrong, let's figure out what you're really good at and lean into
Yep.
that thing. And so I got this wrong, but it's something like there's 4, I think, quadrants that the strengths roll up into. Like one is relational, one is, I don't know, inquisitive, one is whatever, organizational. I don't know. There's like 4 categories.
Right.
And you usually load up like your top 5 or top 3 strengths will load up into, 1 or 2 of those global
Right.
buckets. And so people will go like, I'm a relationship person and that's just what I'm going to do. And then they lean into the relationships and then they're overlooking some gaps potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, well, I'm focusing on my strengths. Well, I mean, okay, focus on them. What are you overlooking? Because that's where your focus is. And is that what you're looking to do?
Yeah.
Like if you're very relational, that's great, but are you getting your shit done? Or if you're
Mhm.
very conscientious, that's great, but you want to be a leader of an organization and no one likes you. Well, it doesn't really matter how conscientious you are. You're not going to be
Mhm.
a good leader.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too, is that it feels like it gives people permission just to focus on the things that they think they're already good at.
Yeah.
And some people may need that. Again, from my perspective, doing the work that we do, working with people inside of organizations, that can be fine at times. But sometimes I feel like I hear that and it's more of a defense mechanism of saying, no, I'm going to focus on what I do well.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's your decision. Just know what you're
Right.
doing and what you're giving up if that's what your decision is.
Yeah. I think you and I see that the exactly the same way. I like the strengths finder because I think it can be empowering. And I
Mm-hmm.
agree it makes sense to, if you like doing something, you're good at it, you should lean into it. But I don't like this thing that I see in so many client organizations where people get a little bit of an attitude of like, this is me, deal with me.
Yes.
It's the same thing like with the Myers-Briggs. I'm an
Yep.
ENFP, so figure out how to deal with an ENFP. And I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to, whatever. I'm this kind of strength. These are my strengths. So,
Yep.
and it's like,
Yep.
no. That is not the way this tool should be used.
No. No.
Yeah.
So I would say again, those were the 2 biggest critiques of it. Now I'm not sure that those critiques mean that, again, as we've talked about, people shouldn't focus on this. I think it can be very helpful for some of the individuals and populations that we've discussed. And then you and I have talked about, I mean, you've mentioned gratitude journals, right? There are different tools that people could use
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if they wanted to do this. So do you want to talk about what like a gratitude journal is?
Yeah. Gratitude journal is, typically I would recommend that people do it in the morning or do it right before you go to bed, but it's to write down every single day 3 or 5 things that you are thankful for. And the
Mm-hmm.
purpose is to help people slow down. If you wake up and you're looking at your day and you're going, oh my God, I hate everything about this day. Nothing's going well. And you have this like really negative view. If you start, it's just mindfulness, really. You're slowing down
Yep.
and going, okay, hey, what are the things that are going well? Or you can do the same thing to sort of decompress at night. What are the things I am grateful for,
Yeah.
over the last 24 hours?
So another framework with the same thing that I've suggested before is just three good things. I think you said it right. Is at the end of every day or some period of time, how do you reflect upon the three best things that have happened in that frame
Mhm.
of time? For a while, my wife and I did that. This was probably during the like 2020, 2021 during the pandemic when, you know, I was antsy and frustrated because, I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do as much as I used to.
Yeah.
And so I think we started doing that. It lasts for a while. I think we did it like every Sunday.
You did it,
It's like, all
you
right,
did
over
it
the past
together
week. Yep. Like
and you would
what?
talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
So that was something that, again, as much as I just chat on this, I think it was helpful for a while, just given where we were, to just focus on, hey, this was kind of cool. This was kind of neat over the past week. Now, we've not done it in 2 years,
Yeah.
probably. But I
Is it
found that to
weird?
be interesting.
It's weird that I have it's hard for me to recommend the gratitude journal. I have like such a negative reaction to that.
Yep.
But I would totally recommend that you do it with your partner like that. Like the fact that you and Jen did it together feels very healthy. And I don't know why. It's a weird thing that I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. But if you just said I did one, I'd be like, oh, you know what I mean? I don't know why I have what is
Does
that?
it feel less performative?
No, I mean, I have to like think about what is wrong with me
Yeah.
that I view it negatively, not negatively, but I just wouldn't lean into
You're
it
more critical of it.
for an
Yeah.
individual.
Right.
As a couple, I go, oh, that sounds very healthy and helpful.
Right. Right.
Maybe I have a little bit of the like, I'm like buck it up as an individual, go suffer in silence versus as a couple, I want you to work on it. I don't know. I'm definitely wrong if I view it so, you know what I mean? If I view it so differently, couple
Right.
versus individual.
Yeah. I mean, I think those who are listening or watching this week, are probably coming away that we're both somewhat emotionally stunted because
Yeah.
of our reactions to this.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, to this
We're not going to
particular
win any
framework.
therapist award after this.
Yeah, that's right. Um, so I thought it would be so that's what I have, but I want to move as we close this episode today. Wanting to give you an opportunity to practice
I knew you were
what
going
you're
to.
going to say on Thanksgiving and just share with the good listeners here, Dave. What are you thankful for this year?
My family is my number one. My family and the opportunity to be here with you, Rob,
Yeah.
and my friendship, family, and health would be the things that I'm most thankful for.
Mm.
Okay, but if you said, okay, like what are the things that you actually like? Those are all true. Those are all true, but they would not be. But I feel like they're platitudes. I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely am happy about them, but I don't know why they feel superficial though. They feel too easy.
It feels like you asked ChatGPT to give
Yeah.
you an answer to the question.
Yes. I think I'm thankful for I'm thankful for this podcast. But let's just say you weren't feeling comfortable telling you gratitude for you. I'm uncomfortable with that.
Oh
This should
yeah.
be much easier for me. I'm thankful for the relationship with my kids. I feel like my kids are getting older. Like a 4-year-old my kids are like little terrorists in the house, but at 4, it is I feel like you're caring for them. And I feel like now that I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, like they're both out of that like
Yeah.
baby stage, and now they have personalities and like I have a different relationship with them, and I like that a lot.
Yep. Yeah.
My in-laws are living in Denver now, and I'm thankful for that. I get to see them a lot more, and that's been really good for my kids. So I'm thankful for that. My wife and I are my wife and I are doing well, and in particular, we do the Pop Psych YouTube channel together, and I'm thankful for like the way that works out, and it's a fun thing that we do
Shameless plug.
together. Yeah, Pop Psych, www.popsych. And I am sincerely thankful for this new channel, Shrink Space, and you, Rob, for forcing me to answer the question.
So,
Your turn, Rob. What are your things that you think?
I was unprepared for the level of thoughtfulness and detail that you just shared there.
See, right now it's going around the table.
I was hoping that I would catch you off guard, and you would have stopped at my friends and family and shit. And I was just going to come at you with my well-prepared response to the question, which you'll still will get. But now I feel like I have to answer the damn question.
Yep. Don't mess with me, Rob.
And now I'm the last one because if I think of what I'm thankful for, and it's difficult not to say family, particularly, I would say my immediate family. So my wife and kids. My wife and I were just talking a little bit about this yesterday. She's out of town on a personal trip seeing Taylor Swift, and she is able to go do that. And so I think we both feel very lucky, not only to have each other, but to be able to do some of those fun things that we like to do. My extended family, I've always been really close with, went on a trip with them recently. And it's nice to just reconnect with people that I don't get to see as frequently anymore. I would say that I feel pretty lucky doing the work that you and I are able to do, because I think it's fun. There's a lot of people who will complain about their job, and I don't, not one of those people most days. So I feel pretty lucky about that. And then, of course, the podcast in general. This has been a lot of fun over the past year. But I did want to save kind of a special shout out for you, Dave. I'm thankful and appreciative to you, in part because when we started this podcast earlier this year, I was nervous. I think in part because you mentioned your other show. What the hell is it called?
Pop Psych.
Pop Psych. And so, but you have a lot of experience doing this, and so I was a bit intimidated by that. But I want to acknowledge that over the past 13 or so episodes, I've come to realize that I really overestimated your talent and ability. And so I'm thankful that you've made me feel so comfortable and talented doing this year. So thank you.
That is very sweet, Rob. That very sweet, very on brand.
No, Dave, I've appreciated it, man. Of course, this has been great. So if you'd like to show your gratitude to Shrink Space this Thanksgiving, please subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to us. We are at Shrink Space Show. You can also find us on email. You can email us your ideas, feedback at shrinkspaceshow@gmail.com. Dave, that's all I got for you.
Thank you, Rob. Awesome. Happy Thanksgiving,
everyone. Yeah, right back at you.